Hello and welcome to The Last Word. Is the Aam Aadmi Party the most exciting aspect of the present state elections, and has it made the Congress and BJP apprehensive? My guests are the well-known Aam Aadmi Party leader Yogendra Yadav, BJP Delhi spokesperson Sambit Patra, Congress spokesperson Randeep Singh Surjewala, and senior journalist and author Siddharth Vardarajan. Siddharth Vardarajan, regardless of whether the Aam Aadmi Party actually wins or loses, would you agree with Ajaz Ashraf's comment in today's Hindustan Times that it's triggered a reimagining of contemporary Indian political culture, reclaiming ideals of our democracy that have been persistently violated over the decades?
It's interesting if you look at the origins of the Aam Aadmi Party and the traction that it's generating in Delhi today. It's clearly linked to the sort of frustration that built up over the last 2 years with the performance of the UPA government, the performance of the BJP as an opposition party, frustration with the level of corruption, frustration with the opacity of the political system, frustration with economic policies, land acquisition. There's a whole host of issues which has led to disenchantment across the country with politics the way it is. And today, in the Delhi, at least in the Delhi elections, to have an electoral option to serve as a focal point for that frustration, I think is a very, very new development. This has never happened in such a concentrated way before. You've had, at the regional level perhaps, the emergence of a new party or a party representing the aspirations of a section of society. But for a party to emerge which captures across the board frustration with the system the way it is today, and which claims to present a viable alternative, I think this is something very significant and very dramatic.
You know, Sambit Patra, something else that's novel about the Aam Aadmi Party is the clean and transparent way they've set about raising funds. For instance, every single penny that they've received and who they've got it from has been fully declared on their website, and then they've actually declared a limit at 20 crores. That is something no party's done. Would you accept this is an example parties like yours should learn from?
Karan, I believe there has been a lot of transparency, but the only problem is, ironically, the guru was not explained about the whole thing. The mentor, Mr. Anna Hazare, was not explained. It was on the website maybe, but it was not in the minds of the one who taught them as to how they should be functioning. That's the old problem, and we are seeing it everywhere. You also flashing as to how Anna is not very happy with the way they were functioning. But secondly and most, a very serious question, Karan, I want to raise over here. The serious question is, maturity, I believe, is one of the most important pillars. Organization, I believe, is the second most important pillar after maturity on which democracy rests. And a political party like AAP, I believe it needs to be mature. It needs to have organization. Without maturity and without organization, it is almost the soul and ego of a single man.
You may well be right in saying that their lack of organization and what you allegedly call their lack of majority may be obstacles. But on the earlier point you made about Anna Hazare, there is a very important reply from Arvind Kejriwal, which is that if in any way, any inquiry which he's encouraging finds him that he's made a mistake or he's guilty of taking people's money, he will stop contesting these elections. Isn't that an open, honest answer to the charge?
So look, he's taking his own medicines, in fact. He has been abusing and accusing every other leader in this country, and almost this was a very important, this was the way everyone answered. If we are found guilty, we would leave politics. What is new? He has fallen into the same trap that he created.
Randeep Singh Surjewala, a second novelty about the Aam Aadmi Party is the manner in which it's actually campaigning. It's going door to door. It's actually encouraging small gatherings in mohallas to appeal to people in a personal and intimate way. Essentially what it's doing is once again establishing the contact between the candidate and the voter, something that big parties like yours either have forgotten or don't have time for. Once again, isn't that something that you need to emulate?
See, as far as person-to-person contact goes, Karan, that is the first principle of politics that you learn when you come there. I fought 5 elections myself. Forget about national leaders, but when you fight a municipal election, when you fight a legislator's election, and most of the times even a parliament election, you make sure at least up to the legislator's election that you go to each house. So there's nothing new about it. However, it is nice, they are enthusiastic, they are young, they are bringing a new perspective. But I agree with the BJP spokesperson here that there definitely is a need for a positive semblance of maturity. Accusations cannot substitute the truth.
Okay.
And sometimes when you start doing it, sooner or later you fall into the same trap. What happened to Aam Aadmi Party, I very quickly want to point out. The movement first split when Swami Agnivesh and Kiran Bedi ji both split from the movement. The second split came when Anna Hazare himself, the Guru, split from the Chela, that is Shri Arvind Kejriwal. And now we are hearing, we are seeing his letter, we are hearing allegations which may or may not be 100% accurate, and there could be confusion in communication.
Okay.
My best wishes to them. But I suppose that's a definite concern that they need to address. Not only to Anna Hazare but also to people of Delhi.
Well, we have...
Also, they need to tell people like Shazia Ilmi to mind her language.
Okay.
In the enthusiasm, let's not berate and denigrate the political discourse.
Just to be accurate, it wasn't Shazia Ilmi's language, it was the language of the person with her who was doing the campaigning. But leave that aside. Yogesh Yadav, I'm not going to go into this issue of splitting because that actually all happened before Aam Aadmi Party was formed. I want to instead put to you two connected issues. First, the point made both by Randeep Singh Surjewala and Sambit Patra that you lack maturity and you also lack structure and organization. And I'll add to that two other possible problems. You lack experience of electoral politics as a party, and perhaps your middle class appeal won't cut across different classes, castes and creeds. Put together, are those 4 points serious handicaps?
Karan, that's true. I think lack of experience is a limitation in politics, and nothing can substitute for lack of experience. But I don't understand fully whether I understand this word maturity very well. What does it mean to be mature? I guess sometimes what it means to be mature is, I will not speak about Robert Vadra and you keep quiet about Ranjan Bhattacharya. We don't have that maturity, and I really wish we never picked that kind of maturity. As for organization, it is true, we are a very young organization, we are beginning to develop it. I'm not sure Congress is a very good model of organization. I thought this is a place, this is a party where organization has been systematically destroyed, and BJP in the last few years has been exactly following in the footsteps of the Congress. So I'm actually not surprised that Congress and BJP spokesperson actually spoke in somewhat similar voice.
Okay.
Let me say just one thing, Karan, on this. You know, it's very easy for me to claim all these great things for my party, but the matter of fact is that I was truly surprised when we started getting the kind of traction that we did in Delhi in the last few months. I suspect it has more to do with what Siddharth said. It's people's sense of deep disgust with the political establishment that they see, that they were so desperate to look for an alternative, that we, with all our faults, and we have many more faults than my Congress and BJP colleague has mentioned. I mean, I can actually rattle off many of our problems. But even despite all these problems, people are willing to give a chance to a newcomer. And I suspect that is truly an indictment of the political establishment, more than a positive affirmation of who we are.
You may well be right, but I want to concentrate for today on the novel features that Aam Aadmi Party has introduced, because in a sense, those are the exciting changes we're seeing. Now, they've launched their manifesto today, but more importantly, they also intend to bring out 70 individual manifestos for each of the 70 constituencies in Delhi, and the aim is to ensure that particular local concerns are addressed. Will that give them an advantage over other parties, or do manifestos simply not matter?
I think manifestos at the general level don't matter because people are used to parties putting out a set of promises which they can never be held accountable for. The fact that you have constituency level manifestos, perhaps parties have attempted versions of this in the past with handbills or pamphlets, but in a focused sort of way to zero in on problems of an area, and particularly when you link that to the process that the Aam Aadmi Party has tried to follow as far as candidate selection goes, where you involve local people in the selection process and you don't impose a candidate from above the way that most parties do. This has the potential to transform the grammar of politics at the local level. And I think it's part of the fracturing of a political consensus, a political system, which is what I consider to be quite positive, because this political system, this consensus, has become quite restrictive, oppressive in many ways, and it blocks people. So for the first time, you have a party fighting a campaign in a way that allows people to participate. And I think that's something that's very new for them.
You know, Siddharth Varadarajan talked about the manner in which the Aam Aadmi Party is choosing candidates, and that reflects another deep concern that people have with traditional politics, the way it's been practiced by you in Congress. Now, what Aam Aadmi has done is to ensure that their candidates have no criminal charges, and I'm told that they're actually sending out voicemails asking people to inform them of misdemeanors or any charges that they're unaware of or overlooked. Why is that something your party couldn't do in response to the deep concern people have about the sort of candidates?
Not at all, Karan. I have a small list of people in my pocket, approximately 10 such candidates from Aam Aadmi Party who were previously in the BJP or in the Congress and were denied tickets, and they got the tickets from the Aam Aadmi Party. So this is the same kind of politics that we have been witnessing in Uttar Pradesh, a number of states since long.
And are these people with obvious charges that are reprehensible?
It's charges is not important, but the most essential part is they were a part of political parties, previous political parties, and just because they had personal ambition, they shifted their bases. And yes, there were charges against number of Aam Aadmi parties. Some of them were dropped, and some have not been dropped.
You got a good point that you're making. Let me very quickly put it to you again. The charge being made is not that you've taken on people who have charges and therefore contradict your platform that you're clean, but that you've taken people who've been dropped by other parties. In other words, you've taken what colloquially could be called opportunists, if not time servers, not people actually who share your particular dedication to cleaning up politics. Are you guilty of that, Yogendra Yadav?
One part of this is simply false, which is that we have not given ticket to a single candidate who has applied for Congress or BJP or any major party ticket this time and who was denied simply because we had actually firmed up all our tickets even before Congress and BJP announced their tickets. But if there's any one name I would like to know, yes, there were people who previously were in Congress, who were in BJP, who were in communist parties, who were in socialist parties, who have come to us. Yes, people from political establishment, different parties have come to us. And the matter of fact is that most of these big parties have had people who were somewhat honest, who were frustrated, who wanted to find a way out, and yes, they came to us. Okay. And the matter of fact is that our party had large public sympathy, had a leader, but we actually lacked middle-level leadership, which has come from some of these parties. So the important point is not whether they were in other parties or not, but whether these were corrupt people, whether these were people with criminal antecedents, whether these were people without character. Okay. That's the point that needs to be made. And of course, we are going out, and Arvind Kejriwal says again and again, even if one candidate is found with any of these three charges, serious charges, even after nomination is over, we would withdraw the candidate and say we would leave this seat.
Let's not make this a personal quarrel between the two. Let me bring in Randeep Surjewala, who's been listening with patience. I want to bring up another aspect of the Aam Aadmi campaign that has struck and attracted a lot of attention. Your party relies upon the Gandhis and Sheila Dikshit to campaign in Delhi, the BJP increasingly on Mr. Modi. Aam Aadmi actually doesn't have a charismatic leader like that. The people who they were once associated with, who did have charisma, like Kiran Bedi or Anna Hazara, they've actually parted company with. Yet despite that, and that's the critical point, Aam Aadmi has caught the imagination of the city. Doesn't it show that actually little people with dedication, painstakingly working in the small gullies, can actually catch the imagination and win affiliation?
Karan, as far as Aam Aadmi Party goes, in fact, if you were to ask me, yes, there are many positives. We are on the other side of the political front, but to say that Aam Aadmi Party has all the ills perhaps is wrong. Yes, they brought a third party in Delhi elections and we welcome it. It's healthy democracy. But the truth is also that Shri Arvind Kejriwal has been right from the beginning of the Anna movement a flashpoint of breaking the Anna movement twice over. First, when, as I pointed out, when both Kiran Bedi ji and
is that relevant
Swami
really?
Agnivesh parted company and then Anna parted company.
Is that a relevant point, Randeep Singh Surjewala? We're not talking about the Anna movement, we're talking about the Aam Aadmi Party, which came into being well after they parted company with each other. So why go back to the past to damn him?
Yeah, but they are also represented by one person, and that is Shri Arvind Kejriwal himself.
All right.
So
But
the
are you
party
then, are you
really
then, are you
revolves
then
around him.
conceding? Then are you also conceding that Arvind Kejriwal's personal charisma matches Sonia Gandhi and Rahul Gandhi? Because that seems to be implied.
What you asked me a specific question, Karan, and that
Okay.
was that the Aam Aadmi Ki party is not centered around an individual. And I pointed out to you that Shri Arvind Kejriwal is the person
All right.
around whom the whole party is centered around.
I'll take
And
that.
that's a fact.
I'll take that,
And-
although what
and
I was saying
fair
was not
enough.
centering around so much as dependent upon a charisma of a particular leader. But let's take a break and come back and move to the critical question that I suppose lies at the heart of this discussion. How will Aam Aadmi do? Are the polls correct in suggesting that they could come in second in Delhi? Or are those not really believable? That's the big question in a moment's time. See you after the break. Welcome back to The Last Word. Is the Aam Aadmi Party the most exciting aspect of these state elections? Sambit Patra, a year ago the BJP thought you would win easily in Delhi. Today, the Aam Aadmi has thrown that into complete doubt. Would you accept that alone is proof of their success?
Not at all, not at all. Apprehensive, in fact, I believe overconfidence is always a bad tendency in politics, and apprehension should always prevail. But the most important issue is I believe in media, and I believe in the surveys that the media has projected, and they have projected BJP as the #1 political party, emerging as the winner.
2 points ahead of Aam Aadmi, well within the margin of error,
It
which
would
could
be
be
number of
reversed.
points ahead. We just have to wait till 8th of December. But I just wanted to make a very quick point. I was hearing to Yogendra Yadav's contention that, well, there are some members of BJP who have joined the Aam Aadmi party and they become very holier, I believe. And I always remember Kejriwal says that when everyone else in all the political parties were corrupt.
Let's not go back to an old discussion that's now over and done with. Randeep Singh Surjewala, would you at least accept, because you were willing to say that you welcome Aam Aadmi, will you also now accept that they've created a momentum and they've created an excitement that's taken the big parties completely by surprise?
Oh, absolutely. See, elections are always, Karan, extremely interesting. And finally, political parties have to bow to the wishes, journal wishes of the people at large. 3 times we have won, we accept it with humility. 4th time, we will win again with Mrs. Sheila Dikshit, but not without the people's support.
All right.
And yes, Aam Aadmi Ki party has thrown a challenge both to BJP and Congress, and we accept that.
All right.
In a democracy, the challenges are always welcome and people finally decide.
Yogendra Yadav, the polls are predicting that Aam Aadmi could get 26% of the vote and tie with Congress for second position. But polls, as you know better than anyone else, can also be horribly wrong. So I want to ask you, both as an Aam Aadmi leader as well as a respected political analyst, how do you actually believe your party will fare?
Karan, if we look at all the polls, and for the time being, let me forget my own party's poll, because after all it's a political party poll, which incidentally showed we were at #1. But if you look at average of all the polls all the polls put together, the two facts stand out. One is that all the 3 parties appear to be pretty close to one another in the poll.
And number 2?
Well within the margin of error. And number 2 is Aam Aadmi party is the only party with a momentum, because across surveys this is the only party which is systematically gaining.
Okay.
If these 2 things are correct, then between the last poll held and the day of polling, there were 40 days. And my sense is that Aam Aadmi party should finish at #1 if we have that momentum, if that momentum is not broken. And in a triangular contest with a very tiny lead in terms of vote share, it can translate into a huge difference in terms of seats.
That, of course, is something we have to wait and see. We have to wait till Sunday the 8th. But in the meantime, Siddharth Varadarajan, even if Aam Aadmi fails to win Delhi, would you agree with the view, once again I'm quoting the Hindustan Times, that they've done a lot to restore democratic ideals to the Indian polity? And at the end of the day, that is the real tribute to them.
They've provided an avenue for popular frustration at the conduct of the BJP and the Congress, and I think that's a positive attribute. They've opened up space. My sense is that even if they come second in Delhi, this will perhaps generate momentum for the Aam Aadmi party to contest a fairly large number of urban seats across India in the 2014 election. So I think the reverberations from Delhi will be felt across India for many, many months.
All right, that reminds me of Biju Nehru's book, Good Guys Sometimes Come Second. That might well be the verdict this time around. My thanks to both of you for coming to studio. My thanks also to Yogendra Yadav and Pradeep Singh Surdewala for joining me. And if you have been, thanks for watching. Goodbye, good night.